for me, example, coming to Austin, a seed was planted in my head, and this started 10 years ago. And I tried to shrug it off. The seed was that I was a musician, and I was called to play music. And it seemed a bit ridiculous because I was a psychologist, and I spent all these years making myself prepared to be a psychologist, spending all kinds of money and sacrificing years of my time. It took me 15 years to become a psychologist after I decided to become one. In 1993, I remember at the time I was seeing a psychologist myself because I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and the psychologist I saw asked me what I liked, and I couldn't really come up with anything, so he just kept listing things. He said, what about business? Do you like business? No. What about science? Do you like science? No. He just went through this list of things, and finally he said, what about my job? And I paused for a minute, and I thought, that might be interesting. You sit in a room and
Do you
talk
think
to
he
people.
saw something in you then? Do you think he asked that question for a pointed reason?
That's a good question. I even thought of that, I think, today or yesterday.
Yeah.
I wondered, why did he say that to me? Yeah.
He probably wouldn't always say that.
You're probably right.
Interesting. Wow. So I hear you talking about the destiny, and so it sounds like you've kind of flowered into the blues doctor. You know, you've achieved maybe in your mind what the seed was, right?
Yeah, it's still unfolding. This
I
seed.
kind of disagree, though, honestly, because I think we do have something inside of us, the nature, but I think the nurture kind of decides where that goes, honestly. I think people in our lives and things that happen to us kind of choose for us. So I think even though you're a talented musician and a great psychologist, I think that same gift could have gone in any other direction if you had been born in a different country, maybe with different... Does that make sense?
But my belief is that we weren't born by accident at any particular time in history. We were born specifically at this time in these circumstances for a specific reason. There's no accident in that regard, in my view.
Do you have the reason?
It becomes more and more clear as you go along the journey. A lot of the times you're not exactly sure what it is.
I got no idea right now.
For me, I know it involves music. And I know that it involves what I'm doing now, psychology. I know that. So there's been so many other things that it could have been through the years that have gradually just fallen away. I was into filmmaking.
Right.
I was into photography.
Yeah.
I was into different things, and I didn't. And these things somehow didn't manifest themselves. They just sort of, doors were closed and they wouldn't open. And suddenly, coming here to Austin for me. You said about the environment, nurturance. So that's an interesting term because it kind of describes why I came to Austin, because Austin felt like a place I was called to come, and arriving here just on a visit, I sensed a certain nurturance to the type of person I am. So in other words, it provides an environment conducive to the fulfillment of one's potential, because I think we discussed it before, a psychiatrist, D.W. Winnicott, talked about a holding environment. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of ways, it is critical to have a good environment, to have someone cares and you can trust and supports your strengths.
Okay.
So the environment of Austin, too, had that call.
So maybe your nature chose that nurture. Does that make any sense? Or
That makes sense. Makes sense. This call, though, it's interesting, and I think Carl Jung and later Campbell talk about how the journey to find your destiny, to claim yourself, it's a perilous journey. It's not a straight line. And I think what happens a lot of times is people start on the journey, and it starts to go awry, and they think, well, let me get off this ship. And what happens is people don't stick around long enough in many cases. Sometimes, like with me, like I said, it just didn't seem to be right. Sometimes you stick with something so long and finally you say, well, this isn't the way to go. I got to try something else. There's a time where you exhaust that. But coming to Austin was a call. And I just bring that up because I know a lot of people that come here are searching types, people who are on spiritual journeys, and that this is a place that harbors these sort of people. So, I think it's just important to talk about it in Austin because people are searching for themselves here. I heard my neighbor said the other day that she's 25 and it's a good place to find yourself. So there's people searching, and I guess part of what I would like to do too to help out in a way that I can is to help people on their journey to find themselves, because that's what I've been doing, and it's not easy, but I believe if you persist and don't give up, things will the doors and the roads open up, like meeting you, just like meeting you guys.
So if you don't mind, I want to try to wrap that to the question we were talking about before we started, which is, so I think we have an interesting society because everyone has the resources to follow their path, you might call it, or Jung would call it, more than any time ever in history, in this place too, in the United States, for example. But it seems like the vast majority of us are struggling so hard, and even some of us are succeeding sometimes and then struggling most of the time. So why is it so hard when it seems like it should be easier than ever with technology and
to find yourself, to become who you're meant to be?
Right. What is that struggle everyone's facing?
I guess the technology, I think we talked about it earlier, can actually, while there's many benefits to technology, I mean, we wouldn't be doing this, and there's so many benefits.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've noticed is what technology doesn't provide often is intimacy. And it seems that people want intimacy. They crave it. They desire it. That's one thing that's missing. While we communicate so much, we really don't have intimacy in the way we communicate. Even like on a telephone, that used to be the old way. Now everything is texting. So I think there's a need for that. And that intimacy, I think people want that. And I think, go back to your question. Tell me your question once.
Well, no, it's great. You've made progress on it. I love the technology topic.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to me, especially the relationships thing. I think you're absolutely right there. I think I'm going to go in a different direction. I think we're extremely fearful of strangers and of people we don't know, of anyone really.
Oh yeah.
Especially here and now.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, that could be any number of reasons. I would name the media as, right up there, but people don't have these intimacies as maybe we were evolved to. Like what I always think of, and it's the evolutionary biology perspective, is we grew up we evolved in these small tribes where everybody knew each other, everybody loved each other because you're all helping each other. Now we're in this weird nameless, faceless mass society where we don't even trust one another. We kind of expect that everybody is out to hurt us.
Yeah.
And I think that is probably one of the reasons why we don't have successful relationships.
Yeah, people are afraid too, we mentioned. Like people I noticed going out to some places in Austin, people are kind of reserved. It seems like they don't want to make too much noise or cause attention to themselves. And somebody said to me, part of the reason is they don't want to get somebody taking a film of them and putting them on the internet. So what I've noticed, what happens is their emotions are pretty much kind of shut down.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of stay within this realm of the middle ground. And
you know what it is? It's, sorry to cut you off there. It's it's the gap, the disparity thing. It's the huge wealth gap in the country. That's one of the biggest problems. There's so much money at the top, so little money everywhere else. It's the same thing with social status. So I want to go back to the tribe thing. I want to be proven wrong on that too, because I've been thinking this way for a long time, that the whole problem is that we've moved out of the tribes.
Yeah.
Because here's what's happening when you're out in the world. In the tribe, you kind of know where you stand socially because everybody knows each other. You know what you provide, you know what your neighbors provide, and you know your worth. But out in society, I don't know what this guy provides. I don't know if this person's looking down on me. And when you don't have that self-esteem and when you're insecure, everybody feels like they're at the bottom. And then you see the celebrities. So the celebrities, instead of having a 150 person tribe, we have a 250 million person tribe or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's very unhealthy, I think, for the psyche.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that, but that's a good point.
It's like the social status idea just came to me. It's that we all feel like we're lower by default.
Yeah. Well, like I said, like we talked about, there's a lack of intimacy, and part of becoming yourself, like we discussed, or going on that journey, it's a lonely journey, because each one of us is completely unique. And I think that's true, and at the same time it terrifies us. Because if we're totally unique, in a sense we're lonely, because there's no one like us and never will be. So we're completely different in a certain sense.
Why?
Well, that's just the way we're made. We're just made that way, just like snowflakes. So people are different, so they feel lonely. So in order to be yourself, it's kind of a lonely undertaking. And one of the problems today is no one really spends time alone, because they're always interacting with something. In order to achieve some of these things that are written about in the ancient texts and great spiritual teachers, you have to be quiet and be alone and experience yourself in solitude, and that can be very painful and lonely. And you have experiences maybe where you resist your solitude and you can't stand to be alone, and that's counterproductive to developing your unique self, because you have to listen in the silence. And I know you, Kyle, and Steve are into meditating and into Zen and also into Taekwondo. Jiu-Jitsu, right. So, I mean, that's on the good path.
Isn't it? I was just thinking, so you're mentioning the spiritual journey. I don't think most people in my social circle even know that exists.
A spiritual journey?
Sure.
That's interesting.
I think that people know about the religions, but I don't think religion even means anything anymore to a lot of people in my generation.
Yeah,
anyway.
I know. I agree.
I was reading. Have you ever read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance?
Yeah, Robert Pirsig.
You did read it.
Oh yeah, right out of
Excellent.
college.
I'm reading it right now. I'm halfway through. It's amazing.
It blew my mind when I read it.
I'd love to talk to you about it. Anyway, he was talking about the spiritual journey as a mountain. The mountain is the symbolism for it.
Yeah.
And I was thinking that last night, like, most people don't even know that exists. I think most people are so distracted all the time that if they do have a moment of silence like you're talking about, that's when they just implode almost, right?
That's a great point, because there's such differences in our generations, and
oh my god,
and it changed so quickly.
And the ones younger than us too. Oh my god.
I assume you guys know certain things, but it's good that you tell me that, because spiritual journey is, I mean, like we talked about, there's the visible world that exists that we can all see, like these glasses, and then there's the invisible world that exists. If you're a person who's of the spirit, which we all are, that's just a fact. There's a world that we can't see, and even physics tells us that we don't know much about what we think we see.
I think people think it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't,
because they can't see it.
Right.
But we've come so far away from things that were primitive, but those things that are primitive are what we called primitive, are what are missing to make us feel whole.
Right.
And I think, like you said, I think there's a craving for it, but it's so interesting that you said that people don't even know what a spiritual journey is.
Oh no, meditation is very weird.
Wow.
Yeah, like we'll talk about it with people we know, and they're like, "Oh, that's cool. I wouldn't do it," or they'll say, "I couldn't do it." A lot of people are just like, "Oh wow, I could never do that."
Is yoga more accepted?
Yes.
Now? Okay, but meditation is still weird.
Yoga's very misunderstood too. I think.
Yeah.
I think people just think yoga is some sort of exercise, but primarily it is a form of meditation. Correct?
When they do the classes, that's what they say. You know, you're supposed to get so into your breath that you're really not thinking.
Yeah.
You're following your breath. I find it hard to do. But.
Fitness is a weird thing. There's definitely a ton of yoga classes like that. Actually, the one I went to here, she's good. She knows what she's talking about. But I think a lot of yoga these days is kind of as it should be. It's just business, but it's fused into this like workout culture. It's like,
Yeah.
get going. It's like, that's not really
Yeah.
the same thing,
No.
right?
It isn't. I was thinking what we just talked about the spiritual journey and the need for people of your generation to even know what that is and how it could help them.
Right.
I mean, that's the journey Jung was talking about. Jung and Freud were contemporaries, and Jung was going to be the predecessor to Freud, but he broke off because of differences in their philosophies. But he was a spiritual person, whereas Freud wasn't. He was an absolute scientist. Freud thought spiritual life was a fantasy, or that God or anything related to that was just a fantasy.
Right.
So Jung is a person that I've found more people talk about in Austin. Because they're seekers. They're spiritual seekers.
Wow, that's interesting. Even in this technological age, there's biases, geographical biases.
Yeah.
Like maybe this part of the country is more into Jung, this part of the country is into Freud. Probably the Northeast is into Freud, right?
It could be.
I would just guess that.
Because where I went to school, they hardly talked about him. I mean,
wow.
That you had, and I think that's probably common because some of his ideas weren't within mainstream, and they kind of pushed him aside. But he's a perfect example of somebody who fulfilled his destiny. He went through great hardships because he had to break away from Freud and he had a breakdown. He didn't know where he was going, but he held on to his faith in himself, and a lot of his work came from his own dreams. The subconscious gives us messages, pictures, places where we should go, and gives us direction if we want to follow them. So a lot of this stuff, like Kyle, like we said, comes from within the person. And today I know there's a lot of searching outside the self, and that leads to distraction and confusion, and that leads to what Kierkegaard called following the crowd, not really having your own.
Well, that's the whole thing, right? And I want to kind of stick to the theme of the current situation, right? So I said most people don't even know about the spiritual journey, and you said, wow.
Yeah.
I think most people don't even think about a real self-actualization journey either.
Wow.
So many people. Actually, this was the prevailing mindset in college.
Yeah.
This was my mindset too.
Yeah.
I don't know what I want to do. I don't even care. I'll do whatever makes me money. I went into marketing because I thought that would make me money.
Wow.
Almost all of my classmates
amazing.
were extremely apathetic.
Yeah.
We're so distracted, and especially materialism and consumerism, we don't even have time to think about what we want to be.
Wow,
because
that's
we
intense.
want to be everybody else. We want to be everybody else. We want to have their clothes.
Wow, that's so intense.
I really think the state of education, and I'm also thinking about that because of Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. They talk a lot about education. But I don't think, I would say, I don't know, I'm just making a ridiculous estimate. But based on my friends, my social circles, 95% plus had no type of path or goal. 95% plus were just trying to get to a job so they could start making money, so they could get a nice apartment, so they could get nice clothes and a nice car. Nobody gives a shit about a journey or a path.
That's interesting because I've always been struggling not going on that path. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. This is what I'm learning later in life. Because when I got out of college, I tried to follow my path, and I wasn't one of those people who figured out how much money I could make. And it looked like that was the stupid way. But here I am, like I said, and things seem to be working out later on in life for me. And if you stay on the path, you just don't know what's going to happen. But I just find it remarkable because, I was discussing this with a young person too, and they said they were just talking about how much money they would make. And I graduated in 1988, and it was different even back then. It wasn't that long ago, but it was quite different. And so Kyle, the thing is that how do you get people to? They don't have time. They're externally focused. They're inside, you know what it is, inside they're empty vacuums, and they can just be sold anything to fill the vacuum.
Exactly.
They're perfect for marketing.
Exactly.
Just help make these people completely empty inside, and then sell them products, sell them things.
Exactly.
It's a great marketing deal.
It is. And I used to think that it was an evil ploy by the marketers to make us all empty inside, but now I just think it was kind of an inevitable marriage of like the evolution of marketing, and then also the I don't even know what the word is, but maybe the degradation of human integrity along throughout the time. I feel like most of us really have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, yeah. And then what you said, you said you were in college and you were not trying to make money. You were trying to follow. I don't think people even know what you're talking about there when you said follow the path. So define what you're talking about there.
What am I supposed to do with my
Yes.
life?
How do you find
Like my
that?
father taught me this. He called it, Doug, you have to find your thing, what your thing is. And his thing was something called model making. Yeah, my father was a model maker, and his thing he taught me was regarding the call, the path. He said, Doug, you have to find your thing. What he meant by that was the thing that you were put here to do, the thing that when you would do it, you wouldn't even have to get paid for it because it would just bring you great joy to do it. So my dad had his own business for 35 years, and he told me once the money was extra. So
wow.
he didn't complain or talk about money. The money was extra. So that, to me, I always felt, well, if I could do something where the money was extra, that would be my thing, I think.
Wow.
So I've been searching for that. So because of my dad's example, I knew that it was possible that a person could do this. And so I tried, I guess, going down a certain creative path, trying to find what kind of creativity suited me best, what form. That's been a kind of a journey. But basically what you're put here for, what when you do, what it comes down to is when you do this activity, whatever it is, what brings you the most joy? Because you're made to do something. And when you're doing the thing you're made to do, things feel right because you're not going against nature.
Here's the main problem, I think. I'm sure it's been a gradual thing, but at some point, money definitely overpowered what you're talking about there. Love of the activity.
Yeah.
And at some point, it became, how do I make the most money? And that's what most people are thinking when they go into college or school.
Yeah.
They're not asking the question. I don't think anyway. I know I didn't.
Yeah.
I know I wasn't told to ask that question because I wasn't anywhere close to that.
Wow.
I was like, I don't know what I like to do. I maybe it was depression too, because I really didn't find a lot of joy in any activities.
Yeah.
So it was probably a combination of the things.
Yeah.
But I had no idea that there was anything like that, and I just said, what can I make money doing? I don't care. I'll be good at it.
Yeah. But how'd you come to be doing this right now? This is interesting.
Would
you have expected that you would be doing this?
No.
Yeah.
It was a deep dissatisfaction with whatever I was doing, no matter what. So whatever job I got, I was like, this is dumb.
Yeah.
So I knew, in my heart, I don't know if I learned it from outside influences, but I knew whatever I was doing wasn't working. So I think it's kind of what you talked about, where you have to try things and figure out what's for you. And I just knew that certain things, like especially a 9-to-5 corporate environment, the type of groupthink that comes with large organizations.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of learned over the years that is not for me. So now I don't even know what I'm, it's still a path, right? What are you going to do?
Sure.
But at the moment, I know that I don't like those things. I like certain things like video editing now or whatever. But it's just at some point along the path, I realized that no, this isn't going to work, because my path was marketing.
Right.
And that is that type of environment.
Yeah.
I just went, oh, nope.
And people in your environment, I don't know what it was like where you grew up, but lots of times what happens is the person you were made to be may not be who the people are around you when you grow up feel that you should be.
Exactly.
And that often affects you in a great way because you need them for security, so you kind of be the person you need to be around them.
And then here's another huge problem, and it comes back to money again. Education is so expensive that now these kids go in with no idea what they want to do. Mainly they want to party, to be honest with you, Doug. When you go to college these days, you want to party.
Yeah.
So number one, they're thinking about partying, and then they think maybe I'll make money eventually, but they're not thinking about any sort of passion.
Yeah.
So what happens is they'll go into something they hate, maybe accounting. It's something that everybody hates, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And they spend 4 years in it, and they've spent $100,000 that they don't have. And now they decide, I don't think I like to be. I don't want to be an accountant. What else are you going to do? You just spent 4 years and $100,000. So now you have a very difficult decision, and I don't think most people are capable of making that decision, or at least at whatever stage in their life. But I see a lot of people that get into that type of situation.
Yeah.
Where they just kind of went down a path, and because of that's another problem with the education. It's so expensive.
Yeah, it's a lot more expensive now. My gosh.
I talk to people with hundreds of thousands of dollars of student debt. Wow. Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Wow.
And these are lawyers, accountants, doctors that then come around and say, I don't think I want to do this.
Wow.
And it's because they never really thought about it.
Wow.
All over the place. Steve, you see that too, right?
You don't think that leads to depression?
That's all over the place, though, right?
Yeah.
Criminal justice. He majored in criminal justice. I majored in marketing.
Middle class.
We just wanted to party. We just wanted to party, so we didn't think about it. I floated through college. I didn't learn a damn thing.
I didn't even have to try.
No.
College is super easy. You still have to pay for it, but it was super easy. It's pretty much just a free education. Just show up.
Wow.
If you show up, you get the passing grade.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you guys went to the same school?
No.
I also just cheated a lot too.
No, we went to different schools. That's the thing. We went to different schools across the country, and this attitude is prevalent. It's apathy. It's just general apathy and faith that if I have money, it'll be okay. That's what it is too. People hang their hats on the idea that eventually I'll have money and then I'll be happy.
Yeah. Now that's interesting because this is it goes in exact opposition to the spiritual journey. You know, the spiritual realm is the unseen realm, the realm that is all around us, that, you know, is, in my view, the real important reality, the most important reality. And so the money is, you know, all focused on ego in this world now, and there's always, however much you make, there's always someone who makes more. And you'll never really be satisfied.
Right.
Because what about that person? They're making more than me, and I got a good raise. But I guess that could just go on and on.
And the problem with making money and having that is that your mindset is focused on the future instead of the present.
Right.
So what happens to these people, and I mean I did it for years too, I'm not judging anyone. I'll probably do it again. I do it. You make a contract with an employer, and then you trade your time for, Duncan Trussell says this. He says you trade your time for square pieces of green paper.
Yeah.
Is what it is. You're selling your soul. You're selling your life.
Yeah.
You're saying 40 hours of my life is worth this amount.
Yeah.
So let's do that over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And like you said, if you're doing something you love, then that's time not wasted.
Yeah.
But when you're doing something that you hate or you just find boring, you're wasting your life.
Yeah. So it's a good motivator to want to find the path that you should be on.
I think so.
It's a good
It
motivator.
took us a few years, but now we see, you know,
It's
I wasn't
important.
happy. You know, we weren't happy, you know?
Yeah. It's all over. I know it is. But a lot of people do come to Austin for that reason. They're unhappy. Right? They're unhappy the way things are. I kind of thought, in a way, that Austin was one of the last stands in the United States. One of the last places where people come who have some, I don't know, a heightened consciousness or something about the direction. And it's kind of like a meeting place.
It's a very romantic idea.
It's in the center
like
of
that.
the country. It's like the last outpost.
Yeah.
And there is a feeling of hope here. And I didn't feel it too much in the Northeast. There was a real dark cloud and not too much hope. And I see it in the people here, the people I talk to. They tend to smile more. So I think there's hope. I guess what I would like to do is learn through you, in part, Kyle and Steve, about the generation that you're in and understand the situation you're in and see what I can do to help. Because I like to do what I can to know at least what the need is or what the mindset really is.
I see what you're saying, and I like it. I think it'll be, to be perfectly honest, it's going to be taking your knowledge and translating it. It's actually a different language now.
Yeah.
It's too much. People, and here's the truth that maybe you don't know. People can't pay attention to that stuff long enough anymore.
Yeah.
You have to break it down. That's why most of these successful YouTubers that I'm never going to emulate, I'm never going to do this. They chop them. They'll talk to the camera for 30 seconds, and then they remove the space between their words. They cut everything down to the shortest amount. The attention span is minuscule. So what we have to do is we have to take your knowledge of the spiritual realm, and we have because here's the other thing. I don't think hope is lost because I don't think people know this exists, but I think they do feel the hole. I think people are mainly distracted. I think they're mainly looking at their phone. They're mainly working. They're mainly going home. They're looking at the TV. But then once in a while, I think they feel the hole. So I think they know that there's a problem. What we have to do is we have to define the problem and then show the map. Actually, I hate to keep bringing up this damn book. Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. He talks about how the path up the mountain of the spiritual, it's when you get higher and higher, the trail disappears because nobody goes that far.
Boy, that's deep.
I think the map has been lost. I think the map has just been thrown away. The map is unreadable to us now.
Deep.
That's the problem. So we need to write a new map.
And the higher you go, it's true, the lonelier it is.
Yeah.
And then you get lost and think, am I in the right place? And no one's around.
Me and Steve feel very lonely, and we've only just started meditating. We barely know what's going on, and we can't talk to anybody we know about this stuff. Barely anybody.
Well, that's good. I like that. I like that metaphor, going up the mountain, and the language is different. Like, for example, when I did my brochure, the Blues Doctor brochure, my friend Brian, who helped me with it, I was going to do a traditional brochure, writing with a lot of script, and he said, no, we got to do an infographic. He said, because people can't spend much time. They just need to look. We need to put pictures, and it turned out to work out really well.
Good.
That's why I need to collaborate with you guys. Because you can help me.
We can definitely, that's great. Technology is making us so good at getting each other's attention that there is such a high competition for attention.
That's true. That's why the bolder things get attention.
So you have your one shot. If it's a brochure, or maybe you take a couple shots. You got T-shirts, but you have a shot, and that's why marketing is like. I think even these days, even if your thing isn't marketing, I think there's things you need anyway. Like my thing isn't video editing, but I need to know video editing. Your thing isn't marketing, but I think you need to know some marketing, right?
Absolutely.
So important these days. But it's also the main part about marketing, though, too, is having a quality product. If you have a quality product, the rest falls into place. So as long as you can genuinely help people, it'll work out. Word of mouth is always the most powerful thing anyway.
And the spiritual journey, I like that. Maybe we could we could talk more on that in the future.
Yeah, well, here's what we're doing already. We're already making connections, and I'm holding these free meditation sessions out in the park in Austin. Anytime I'll post locations, we do these free meditation sessions just in public. It's a safe environment that people feel welcome to do, and so we're spreading it that way. You go into these yoga classes and just meeting people, and that spreads just organically, right?
Meeting people is key.
So basically, to again, I'm speaking weird language again. It's weird. We're just talking about slowing down. We're just talking about stopping stimulation.
That's true.
Right? That's all it is.
That's basically what we're getting back to. Is that we're overstimulated. In order to hear the voice, to find your direction, has to be quiet.
And it never is.
It's never quiet.
It's never quiet.
We're constantly being fed information. We think that the more information we have, somehow that'll convert to wisdom. And I don't know that it does. It's just, more information can clog you up too.
And it's the quality of information too, because even the written word, text, is losing to pictures and videos. So if you go on, Facebook or Instagram, where Instagram doesn't even allow text; it's just pictures. So this is how people are communicating these days, and the quality, the real meaning, is diluted as the stimulation is increased. So it's kind of like junk food. The nutritional value is low, but the stimulation is high. It's addiction. We're not even getting information. We're tricking ourselves when we think we're on our phones and we're learning. We're not learning.
One thing I hope that can bring people to stop is music, a sound. There's a book that I'm reading by Carlos Santana. It's his autobiography. It's called Universal Tone. And he believes that there's a certain tone, a universal tone. You know how, I guess it's really deep it goes back to like the Om in the universe, how at the bottom of everything there's music.
Mm-hmm.
So somehow he believed, Carlos, and writes about it, how certain musicians have the universal tone. And when people hear this tone, they stop because they recognize the quality of it.
Wow.
And it's not so much how many notes you play or how fancy you are, but it's having this certain tone that people respond to. It resonates within them, and they stop and listen. And so my hope also is that through music, through the tone of playing, through the sound of the music, that people will stop and listen to the music.
Wow.
And it sounds maybe a little far-fetched, but I think
it
there's
doesn't.
truth in it.
The funny thing is, I'd never even heard of that, but Steve and I were actually talking about the tone on yesterday's podcast, Self-Help Yourself with Dave.
Yeah.
The tone, I'm going to be bold and try to talk about what it is. I don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
It's the musician getting out of his own way, losing all insecurity, and just giving into the music, letting whatever's coming in flow through him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. Yeah.
And I think that is seen in everything. So you see that in musicians that you really respect. You see that in comedians, the really effective comedians.
Yeah.
Just they're getting out of their own way,
And that's
losing themselves into the moment.
Yeah.
Right? So I think it's probably universal even outside of music.
Yeah. But there's a resonance or an acknowledgement, and it comes from within. But I think you're right. It's connecting. I guess that's a hard part too. Is losing yourself. That's scary.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I play a lot of music, I feel if I keep playing that I sort of dissolve, or I'm just floating. I don't really have any weight, and it's kind of a scary thing. It's exhilarating. It's the most exhilarating and at the same time a little bit scary,
Mm-hmm.
because it feels almost like I'm not there.
Right.
But,
Wow.
But there's something about that feeling that, boy, if you could share that feeling, that experience, you could spread it out, amplify it. You could spread because to me, music is the most direct form of art. It's invisible. It goes straight into your soul. You don't have to see it, or it just goes right in. And sometimes you can get in there and get through people's defenses, get right into their heart, right through the chest cavity and the ribs. And that's basically what you want to do.
That's awesome.
You want to get in there and touch people, because they need to be that touched, I think.
That's awesome. Because music does have a powerful quality like that. The ability to penetrate where somebody might not even think they're vulnerable, right?
Yeah, yeah. And
That's
it's
weird.
no words, because words are tricky. Words have so many different meanings, and we can use words for so many
Yeah.
different things, but pure sound, like sound of notes or whatever, that you can't really do much with that.
Yeah, and it's sneaky too.
Yeah.
Because if I try to tell somebody an idea, they can say in their head, that's not me, I'm not going to listen to that. But music, you don't do that. You just listen, and then it sneaks up on you. Right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
people don't shut off music the way they do with words.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. I gotta be honest with you, Doug, I don't even listen to music that much.
Yeah.
You gotta get me back into music.
Yeah,
I gotta
yeah.
feel what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I really don't even know what you're talking about. I
That's
don't
good.
dance
That's good.
ever. I mean,
That's
the funny
good.
thing about music today too is it's the same thing.
Yeah.
People don't listen to music anymore. They listen to the top 40 or whatever. Like you go to the clubs on 6th Street and it's the same damn song over and over again.
Yeah.
Nobody cares.
Yeah, yeah.
It's nobody's
changed.
feeling anything.
It's changed. I hope to have an impact.
I think I already sound like an old man, by the way. I'm sorry. I'm like, nobody cares.
No,
Nobody-
but it's good. I'm glad you're telling me what you think is what you see is true.
I think the whole thing's so broken. I think
Yeah.
everything's broken.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is broken. It is broken. Yeah. And part of the Blues Doctor's mission is to help heal some of the brokenness.
Yeah. So tell me, I mean, is that something you want to divulge? Do you have ideas beyond?
Well, through music and through my work as a psychologist.
So you want to be performing more?
I want to perform more. I want to affect people directly.
Awesome.
I want to have a direct impact,
Awesome.
because, like I said, words are tricky, and
You get some gigs, and we'll let everybody know that we can.
Yeah.
You know,
Everyone
we're-
has an opinion.
Yeah.
I wanted to make a T-shirt that said, because I met this guy and we were going to play together and jam for a while, and I was really enjoying it. And then we just started talking, and I told him I want to make a T-shirt that says, "I don't want to debate. I want to create." You know, because talking is good, but going into the heavenly spheres is better. You know, so I would like to do that. I'd like to do both, and I'll certainly let you know when things start happening.
I think that was so. You were in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
I think. So you talk in very lofty terms. I think you said you were having trouble meeting people that thought the same way. I think it's because maybe there was a communication gap, because maybe people here are more sensitive to what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Whereas the people there, you couldn't even.
No, it didn't feel.
I think I'm understanding more what you were talking about.
Yeah,
I think I get it a little bit more.
Like I wouldn't be having this conversation because no one would be interested in what I was doing, and you reached out to me, and so that makes me feel like, oh, this is a good place because it's pulling out of me what I feel is what I'm supposed to do. I think I'll stick around. You know, I think I'll see what happens. Follow this unknown path. The unknown path.
Sure.
Yeah.
And as long as it's working out in the present moment, then there's no need to change it or even think about changing it.
Yeah. You have. I guess the big thing is faith. You have to have faith that you're following, that what you're following is the path. And
we disagree there, though, Doug.
Yeah.
I don't have faith. What I just said is my faith. It's if it's okay in the present moment, then keep doing it. But if it doesn't feel good anymore, I would probably abandon the podcast immediately. I have no faith.
I guess what I'm saying is sometimes, like I said, there are bumps in the road.
Yeah.
Today it may not go well, maybe next week, but maybe a month later it turns around. So sometimes it's just, it's not always a good day, right? And if you feel like, well, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, for me, since I'm older, I've tried so many things. So I've gone down roads that I'm like, okay, I did that 10, 15 years ago. That didn't work.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to do that again.
What's the weirdest or, oddest job you ever had?
When I got out of college, well, I had one job right out of college. I worked at the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC,
Right. Wow.
in Washington, D.C., and I worked as a reader, READER, for a 88-year-old blind engineer, Dr. Raymond Wilmot. And he kind of looked like Albert Einstein, and we would work, he couldn't see, he was legally blind, and we would prepare papers together for the FCC. He was a consultant, they really respected him, so we would write papers together, and I would help him write the papers and read to him because he was blind.
Wow.
So that was my first job out of college.
It doesn't sound so bad.
And then after that, this was the most atypical job I ever had. I couldn't find a job because I was trying to get into filmmaking, and my friend offered me a job at a company that became a Dow Jones company, working out of the Securities and Exchange Commission. I was a financial news reporter. And that's something I never thought I would do because I wasn't really interested in finance, but the part about it was the writing, because I had always liked to write. So
Sure.
At least there was the reporter there. So those are the two kind of jobs. I guess the financial one just didn't. I would be reading the Wall Street Journal in the morning and thinking, what am I doing here? I'm 23 years old. I went to college to study filmmaking. I was reading the Wall Street Journal.
I have a question for you then. So you say we all have our destinies, we all have our path. Does anybody wake up with the stock market path, or is that a weird perversion that happens somewhere?
In other words, some people just know it automatically.
Sure. Is anybody meant to be a stock market mogul?
I'm sure there probably are people. I don't think... I don't know. My view is I don't think people are made to intend to be not nice people or evil or whatever, greedy or whatever, but I'm sure there's people born to be financial consultant, things of that nature. I don't know.
Yeah, financial consultant, it goes back to helping people, right?
I guess.
So I see some value in helping people there. I don't consider stock market moguls bad people, but it's just, It seems like what they call it is the same thing as poker. For a while, I wanted to be a professional poker player.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is it's a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
Nobody's gaining anything. You're just taking.
Yeah.
So you're not really creating anything for society.
Yeah.
Which, if you don't want to, then whatever.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so that's the reason I wonder, is anyone really born to be a poker player? Is anyone really born to be a stock market guy or a gambler, that type of thing?
That's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. I know that there's probably people that were born to be a doctor or born to be
Sure.
this. You've seen people that they knew at a certain, when they were little, this is what they wanted to be, and everything just seemed to fall right in place, and you want to hit them, because you're like, wow, that came easy. Why did I have to go through all this? Maybe because it's interesting. Maybe because so much of what I'm learning is that the resistance comes from within us, within our own selves. Somehow, that happens a lot. So we fight our own selves. We're constantly in battle with ourselves. I think that has something to do with it.
So what is that? Where does that come from? That internal struggle?
I think one thing I notice is we tend to blame people for our own problems often. I do this, and often it really is something that we're doing to ourselves out of fear. So I guess the question that we're talking about is why, right? Why do some people, why are they able to find that purpose?
Yeah, why are some people just happy?
Well, why do others have to struggle?
Yeah.
I can say one thing about my own struggle, and this is true. I've struggled a lot and suffered from depression a lot. And I can honestly tell you, I wouldn't have chosen to, believe me. But it changed me as a person. It made me a different person. It carved something in my spirit, in my heart, that made me probably a better person. Maybe I needed to be a better person.
Well, you were describing the assets, and you had a list of several specific benefits that came from periods of depression.
Yeah. One of the things that I found in my research when I was writing my dissertation is people who suffer from depression, clinical depression, what formerly was called melancholia, they tend to be very deeply spiritual people. They tend to, in their natures, they're always looking inward. That's part of the nature. I think we talked last time of depression, where there's a search. What's wrong with me? Why do I feel this way? And the search begins to try to get yourself out of this depressive prison. But it goes within. The search is within us, and that's the same path as the spiritual path. And so when you get to the end of psychology, when all those techniques and ideas end, you get to the world of the spirit, and that's what Jung found out. It's just exhausting all the possibilities in the known seen realm, and then going into the spiritual realm. But I think people, like they said in the research, people who suffer from depression back in the old ages, they were known as very spiritual people, and probably a lot of spiritual people were kind of depressed. I know Gandhi, I think I was reading that Gandhi suffered from depression. So that's just one thing I was able to think of. But there's many more.
That's so interesting, because now that you're saying it, that makes sense that there's a huge overlap between spirituality and depression.
Yeah.
Do you think then that people who don't suffer from depression possibly don't even need the spiritual path? Maybe it's not even part of their life?
No, I really think it's necessary for everyone.
You really think so?
I think it's the basis of reality. But I think the people who have the depression problem, in a way, they have a disadvantage because they have depression, which is painful and it hurts a lot. But they have an advantage because they're compensated in a way because of what it does for them spiritually, that people who don't suffer from depression probably wouldn't have the depth of the spirit as someone, because they weren't caught up in it, and it didn't force them to their knees, and they didn't struggle and suffer as much. And that opens up the spirit, because that opens up your inside, because when it gets real, you start looking for real answers, and you start asking real questions, and all the BS goes out the door, and things become real authentic. And that's when you really enter into a spiritual life. So,
wow.
And I've noticed people who people that I know who don't suffer from depression, I notice there's a different quality to their spirit just by talking with them. You can kind of tell they're not as deep usually in some way. They haven't gone as far into themselves,
right?
Because they weren't forced to. Not that anyone would want to.
Yeah, and not necessarily. I know what you're talking about. Not necessarily a bad thing. They're pleasant, but just content to maybe small talk. Whereas somebody like you or me is more apt to try to ask the harder questions.
Yeah. So, believe me, I'd rather be one of those people.
You can kind of see each other too, even if you're not sure yet, right?
What's that?
If you meet somebody at a table or a dinner or something, you can kind of tell.
Yeah.
Just by looking at them, right? A little bit sometimes.
Yeah. A fellow sufferer can tell.
Right. Yeah.
And there's a lot of other things we could discuss about the advantages, because I had a whole list of them.
What's the most important one to you? What's the most important advantage that you got?
Oh. I guess honestly, what we're talking about, the spiritual journey, how it sort of directs the spiritual journey, and it leads you to places, deep places. And for me, it made me a better musician,
right?
A better artist, a better writer. All those things. No one would want to feel that pain, but it has an effect, I guess.
It's funny because we say disadvantage, but it's also an advantage because of that, because the depression and the suffering causes you to seek spiritually. Whereas what we were talking about earlier, so many people don't even know it exists, and they will probably put it off their entire lives or close to it because of their contentedness too.
Yeah.
Because of their contentedness, you mentioned something like meditation, and they go, well, I'm already happy. I don't need meditation.
Yeah.
So that is, you could call that a disadvantage to the content life.
Yeah.
Certainly, you're not getting a deep experience there, right?
Yeah. People, and I guess today, one of the things we talked about before was how the emotions are kind of subdued with medicines and everything, and people feeling things hurts. But if you have the courage to feel things, beautiful things can be produced from that. If you'll have the courage to feel things that other people won't, you can kind of be, in a way, feeling all their feelings for them, and then making something beautiful and showing it to them.
So, this is how we're going to do it, Doug. First, I'm going to describe why it's such a hard task. Because all the other stuff is exponentially easier. It's monumentally easier to not do the spiritual path.
Yeah.
To take the drugs, to get distracted, to lose yourself in the monotony of regular life.
Yeah.
It's way too easy to do that compared to meditation. And people just don't listen to it. But what we can do is just... I don't remember who said the phrase, but it's be the change you want to see in the world, right?
Yeah.
So what we got to do is we got to just live it, and we got to really, me and Steve made a pact. We're going to meditate twice daily for the next couple of weeks.
Right.
We have to really live it, and we have to show other people through the podcast. We have to show this is what's going on. This is how it's working. It's working.
Yeah.
It's working.
That's right.
That's what we have to do because you can't ignore it, right? If you see it on camera, you can't ignore it.
You're right. It takes discipline, and it may not be the path for everybody, but for those people who are in the middle and don't know which way to go, this may be the path for them. It does require discipline. It's hard work.
It's so hard.
But it's got to be worth it. It's the only good fight there is.
I think it is. Yeah, so far,
and nothing
else works.
You don't realize the effect you have on other people by just following the path, what you're on, and committing to it.
Yeah.
And just reaching out and taking a chance.
Yeah.
You affect people. You don't realize it.
So, okay, I'm going to take a minute to speak to the audience. I don't know who's watching the KyleCast. I really don't. There's 800 people that watch one of them, 200 people. I don't know if this is weird. If this is going over your heads, bear with us. We'll make it digestible. We'll work really, really hard. But if I could just slow it down, we're talking about, again, slowing down.
Yes.
Just, so it's the practice. It's the journey. It's it's practice.
Yeah,
it's taking time out of your day.
Yeah, it's a daily thing.
It is, and what it is it's practice in feeling better. You sit down and you just try to feel less distracted and less consumed by your thoughts, right? And if you practice this, you feel a difference in your everyday life. And when you do it for longer and longer, you see that it goes deeper and deeper, and then you wonder where else does it go.
Yeah, there's no limit. There's no limit. We only put the limits on ourselves. We limit everything, pretty much. We limit how much we'll feel, what we'll think. We put limits on ourselves because we tend to be afraid of extremes, extreme anything, so we want to make everything in the middle.
And we're afraid of looking weird and silly, and this stuff looks weird and silly.
Yeah.
So here's the other thing too. I kind of asked a question. I said maybe people don't need it, but I agree with you. Everybody needs it. Yeah. And here's the thing: we need it because our baseline was so low, and we find that it works. But if your baseline is higher and you meditate, you're going to feel even better.
Yeah.
You're going to feel better if you meditate. It's just it's like a scientific fact at this point, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is it's pretty much it.
Yeah.
If there's one message that I could spread, it would be just meditate.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a good one.
I think that would be it. Yeah, for me right now, I don't have anything else.
That's good. And I look forward to talking with you again. Please.
Doug, you were great. Thank you so much.
Cool? That was good.
Many more, please.
That was good. And that's